That's under general fund, sheriff, administration.
Yes. Right off the bat, I'd like to show you that as I reviewed this on Monday, I caught for the first time there is an elected official compensation that is $10,000 too high. The reason for that was, as we talked about our reorganization and turning lieutenants into captains, and commensurate pay increases for the added responsibility and all of that shift that comes along with that. By the way, this is all designed to free up our sergeants, both in the jail and on the road, to get rid of a lot of administrative duties that we have them doing because they have to be done. We're trying to free those sergeants up so that they can better supervise our line staff. Day to day, hour to hour, we need better supervision of our line staff because that's what's required of us in this world that we live in now. We believe that supervision needs to happen. So in order to do that, it would be adding essentially a layer of supervision within our department in both corrections and patrol. So if you see any reference to captain, that hasn't happened yet. That's something that I look to do later on throughout this year. If we have salary savings, those bumps may come incrementally throughout that process. But if you see reference to captain anywhere, that's where I think we're headed. That's not where we are today.
Can I interrupt just for 1 second?
Sure.
The stipend increase, I went over that with HR after we reverted from your requested personnel spreadsheet to what is in the proposed spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And we had to take into consideration the 4% increase that the lieutenants will be receiving.
Okay.
And so we came as close as we could on that elected official stipend so that we followed statute, making sure that you made at least $1 more than they did. So
Yeah.
I think the 10,000 is accurate.
Thanks, Vicki, for that.
Yeah.
I honestly, this has been the hardest part of this whole reorganization thing for me, is to try and do what I think is right for the county and right for our office and right for the supervisors we have. There's a statute that Vicki referred to that says the sheriff, as an elected official, needs to make more than those underneath him. I've been trying to find ways around that because otherwise, every time I talk about reorganization, it ends up with me getting the big fat raise. And I don't really, that is certainly not where I'm headed. In fact, I tried to structure it so that our lieutenants could move into admin. They could receive a $5,000 a year stipend for the extra work that they do and make their compensation package more than the sergeants they supervise without giving myself a raise.
I understand you don't like that.
I don't like
and
it at
you
all.
don't like it at all, but we had to do it because of the way the statute's written, and so that's why that looks that way.
Well, before we go too far down that path, and I don't know, in talking with HR, and Commissioner, tell me if you're on the same page about this, but the board countywide has basically said policy-wise, we don't do stipends anymore. We reclassify, or we only do stipends, did we say 90 days or less, very short term, because the purpose of a stipend is to deal with something that's on a short-term basis. If you're going beyond 90 days, then it's clearly part of somebody's normal job, and their job and salary should be adjusted to be commensurate with that. So I'm not saying we can't do additional funding for these employees, but to be in line with what the board has done across the board with everyone else, we literally just went through that process of going through the county and eliminating every stipend on this, let's follow policy for everyone. So it'd be better to, I know, and it's clearly nobody shared that with you, but it would, in my mind, to be in line with the whole rest of the county, we should just reclassify and get them at the right salary that could end up being the exact same amount, but we just don't use the term stipend.
Okay, well then there's further modification that we need to do. I'm honestly trying to figure out how to get my two key people on patrol and corrections in the right category, if you will. I mean, I believe eventually it needs to be captain. If we want to talk about captain, that's fine. We don't have a pay scale for captain, so we can figure out what that is. But we have sergeants that just received basically essentially a compensation settlement on some movement within their union, leaving the union and whatnot. Quite frankly, our lieutenants probably, if I'm ever going to be able to attract someone else to the lieutenant rank, they need to make a little bit more maybe with the added responsibility of that position than the sergeants can make. So everything seems to be going up, and I'm trying to keep it so that those key people go up. I don't need to go up, but it's honestly no. Sir?
I'm confused because the category we're talking about is elected official compensation. And the last time I went to the ballot, we only had one elected official in the sheriff's department. Are we just using that as a catch-all category? Who's an elected official in the sheriff's department besides the sheriff?
No one. What are you referencing?
I'm looking at elected official compensation. And that's what I thought we're just discussing.
And that figure is his compensation.
It's just the sheriff, okay. And I would offer just as a thought, I don't know what county policy is, I understand stipends going away. It seems smart and reasonable. But as we saw earlier with juvenile department and the sacrifice Mr. Golden is making, is there anything that would prevent the sheriff from getting that bump that he doesn't want and he's uncomfortable with, taking a dollar amount and donating it back to the sheriff's department? Would that not be a way, I'm asking, I guess, just brainstorming, would that not be a way for the sheriff to accomplish with his lieutenants what he wanted to, and at the same time feel comfortable with the fact that he's not personally gaining from it because he's donated all that money back to his own department?
So Ernie, obviously I'm not an attorney, and I think what Vicky's saying is that under Oregon state statute, the county has to write a check to the sheriff.
Yeah.
That's gonna be $1.
I understand.
Once that money's in the sheriff's hands.
Yeah.
I think the sheriff is free to do whatever he wants to do.
Including donating it to the
Including
sheriff's department.
donating it back to the sheriff's department, because
Okay.
it's, at that point, in my mind, it's his money.
I'm with you, that's what I was asking.
So
I'm not recommending it, because that's obviously a very personal decision, but it just seems, as we talk about a conundrum, one possible solution. Okay, I understand it now. Thank you.
I appreciate the time we spent on it. This is absolutely the topic I didn't want to spend all the time on was that, but I just wanted to point it out that I thought it was $10,000 too high. But that was an oversight that we missed after the work session, preparing the documents for today. I felt that we missed it. But.
Yeah, what really affected it was the 4% COLA that the lieutenants received.
Yeah.
So.
Well, okay, well, if you don't mind moving past that, we're still on administration. I spoke about the increases to the administration budget is primarily and almost assuredly because I'm moving 2 lieutenants into the administration from their respective, where they are now, which would be patrol operations lieutenant and our corrections lieutenant, making them essentially administrative people because I truly believe that's where they are. That's also a little bit of a baby step towards the reorganization where eventually those positions, I believe, should be captains within admin. And then I will replace those with lieutenants in both patrol and corrections eventually. Not by adding new people, but by basically promoting up to those positions from existing staff, I hope. I'm not sure if there's any other, with that, you'll see movement not only with their salaries, but an associated amount for travel and uniforms. Training as well would move from, I believe training as well would move from patrol and corrections into the administrative budget. So almost to a penny, I would think any changes to our admin budget is moving those two positions in there.
So Sheriff, please bear with me because I'm kind of slow. And I'm looking at the salaries and wages for the administration department, and it looks like it's gone up approximately $342,150. It went from 109,771 that was budgeted in '21 to 451,921 in '22. Am I correct?
Yeah,
Okay, so, but then if you go to patrol, which we have one lieutenant in patrol today, his salary would be removed, his salary would move to sheriff administration. And so if you look at the salaries and wages in patrol, they're gonna drop under this proposal of $138,022.
okay.
And do the same thing with corrections.
Mhm.
The salaries and wages in corrections dropped $34,650. So if you net those both up, that's $172,672. So what I'm saying is, if you look at all three of these together, the administration department obviously has gone up, but if you look at your entire budget, that line is only, it's going up 169,000. It's not going up that 342. Are you following my thought?
Well, I think you're trying to balance the movement from corrections and patrol into admin and make sure
I'm
that
trying to figure out,
balances out.
I'm really trying to figure out what that's costing. It's too simple to do that because there's other wages that have gone up, so, you know.
Yeah.
So, but I'm thinking about it in a pretty simple way. But the reality is, it isn't really going to cost the overall sheriff's department budget that 342 that's represented in this line. That's what I'm trying to say.
Really, it's just moving it from one to the other, essentially. And then
And I'm
we can
thinking about
talk.
that right?
I think so, yeah.
Thank you.
It's just a movement, along with their training, their uniforms, the other expenses that come with that, plus the stipend I was trying to get for that position. We could develop because it's where I think we need to get to anyway, we could develop some sort of a captain's salary range and plug them in there. Perhaps that's something we could do.
I think that solves the stipend issue. You know, it's in line with getting them where you want them to be without using the term stipend.
Okay.
Would be my thought as one. I would hate to have done, I think you had stepped out, but we went over, he had a proposal related to perhaps adding stipends to the current LTs. And I shared that we just sort of went through a process to eliminate all stipends, so.
Right.
it'd be hard to-
Yeah, I did not know that. It was a workaround for me to try and get them an increased compensation package a bit without affecting my own.
Okay, are there any
First failure
questions
of
or
the day.
comments on administration? If not, which one would you like to tackle next?
Well, I'll just roll right into patrol. This is the order in which we generally go through them.
Okay.
We are currently full in patrol. If you want to look at, all of our FTEs are either completely filled or in the case of 2 openings right now, conditional job offers are out. Background investigations have begun for the first time in a long time. We find ourselves essentially full with either bodies in seats or in training, already hired, or in the background situation with conditional offers out there. Patrol is one of those, which is something that we are constantly in search of, trying to keep our positions filled, because I believe we need every single one that we have. We actually, I believe, need more with what this county is able to provide. That's exactly what we're trying to do. So that's where we are in patrol. So this budget reflects that.
And are you proposing any new positions in patrol?
No, my goal was to have every position full because last year at this time when we had empty positions, they went away. So I'm trying to get ahead of that a little bit because I truly believe we need every single one. We lost a clerk last year, we lost the animal control position, which when we get to the animal control section, we can talk about what we were able to do there. But no, I'm not adding any more. We'd like to, but this county right now will not be able to afford the 24-hour coverage that I think it needs in patrol. I have a number in my head of what that would be, and I just don't, that's not going to happen right now. So we have moved, we plan on some movement of special revenue funds to fill our equipment reserve. We've done, I think, a really good job, especially with the Board of Commissioners' help over the last 4 years of trying to reinvigorate our fleet and get rid of decrepit vehicles. We've been working on that every single year. And in patrol, since that's what we're talking about now, it usually typically means 1 or 2 new patrol vehicles per year that need to be added in to keep that circulation. So that's what we're looking for, putting money in. We're trying to find some of it in our special reserve funds and move that over. And also to the equipment reserve, which is where we purchase our vehicles from. I don't know what questions you might have about that. We started out with a target of trying to literally, and this has been several years in the making, every year just clamp down a little bit more and a little bit more on every single line item to try and make it fit. We feel like we're cutting it very close on some, although it might not look like it. We think we're cutting it pretty close. We actually have a little bit of concern about things even like fuel and some other things. We'll be able to meet that mark, but we try to bring to this board some best attempt at getting us within a reasonable level, because we know the challenge that you're all up against.
Vicki, we're mandated by the state to contribute a fixed amount for their PERS contribution, and that comes from the state, is that not correct?
That's correct.
So if anybody's looking at our PERS contributions, and they're going up, and I'm talking to Sheriff's Patrol, it went up 30.3%. That's because of the state's requirement for us. So if you look at PERS for patrol, corrections, and the admin department, and not everyone in the Sheriff's Department is covered under PERS. Some of the employees are covered under the county's retirement system, but that's $189,331 that the county is basically required to make up for the fact that PERS is underfunded.
Sheriff, each year, I read in the paper, the
I'm
county
gonna
has.
stop you right there.
Right, okay.
Teasing to all our friends in the
Each
media
year
who
I
are
hear on the
watching.
radio and see on television the fact that in order to supplement general funds and other funds, you've had, the commissioners have had to reallocate money from the road fund to the Sheriff's Department. Is that going to occur again this year?
I believe our budget was balanced. We're at the end, I think, for a reason. I think the Sheriff's Office is at the end of this long week for a reason, and that's because road funds are available to cover gaps in our patrol budget.
Okay.
I can say that for the last 2 years, I believe it's the last 2 years, we have not used road funds at all for that purpose. This year, I believe it's probably what's going to happen. I think 3 years ago, I think we had dipped into the road funds to balance our budget, but we were able to get most or all of that back at the end of the year. So essentially, for the last 3 years, road funds weren't really touched.
Okay.
For balancing the county's budget, using that particular ability to do that.
But this year,
But this year, I was, I think every department was asked to present a balanced budget. For me, in order to do that, I would have had to present a budget that cut positions, cut deputies both in the jail and perhaps on the road, and I was unwilling to do that. I believe that I needed to present a budget that was reasonable, and it was unbalanced when it came to our workshop. And I believe it was balanced by considering using road funds to cover that. And if I am wrong about any
Vicky
of
can
that,
probably
someone
speak better
please
to that.
correct me.
do we know the amount?
He's correct, and the amount's $2,192,897.
Okay. All
And
right.
I just want to make a point, I didn't mean to cut you
I'll go ahead.
Well, my only, it's a very kind of nitpicky language thing, but I refer to them in my head as federal funds. They are funds that were federal, they were originally tagged for roads and schools, but then, through legislation, they were open to law enforcement. So I just think the continual, again, this is my personal bias as a communication person, language person, the continual road funds, they're federal funds that have 3 different buckets they can go under. And I don't know, that's just that's my soapbox for the day. I stepped off my
I'm glad you
soapbox.
refer to them as federal funds from this day forward.
Well, like I said, that's my own personal soapbox,
Well,
and I didn't mean to cut the commissioner off.
And you make the final decision, so your opinion weighs very strongly. Mine is it's road funds. But I will say that I'm deeply disappointed in our media in the sense that this is the first time I've heard that out of 3 years, including the one that's coming, 2 of the years, the sheriff has returned those road funds back to the county.
Are you telling me the media doesn't want to report good acts by public officials and only wants to
I know it's a
report
shock,
bad?
but it's amazing.
So in this
But that's
case,
what I'm saying.
in this case, you could probably refer to it as a newspaper. So another thing, and I'm not sure whose idea this was, I'm pretty sure it was Commissioner DeGroo's, but it used to be 4 years ago that the transfer from federal dollars, if you will, happened at the first of the budget season, at the first of the year. Now it happens at the end. So the sheriff spends general fund dollars first before that money gets transferred. And so even though his budget gets balanced with this 2 million number that Vicky's talking about, at the end of the whole cycle, after they do their very best job to try to save as much money as they can, and whatever may or may not happen, that'll be the amount of money that would be transferred, unless we get a big surprise from the federal government that we have other options. And that has happened in the past. But that, in my mind, is a very good tool to, instead of transferring the money up front, that it comes out later, because then it's the actual amount that the sheriff's department needed to operate for the year instead of the what if that makes any sense.
Perfect.
And I had asked Vicky to provide me with some information regarding how much we've taken out every year for the last 10 years. And so just to clarify, in the 1920 budget cycle, there was $1,833,000 budgeted, but a large PILT payment was received, and so they didn't need it after all. So that's what was returned. But last year, the budget committee, in their deliberations, felt that there shouldn't be any money coming from those road funds, and so we just made, and there was 0 budgeted to come out of those funds and 0 spent. So so last year there were no funds budgeted to come out of those road funds.
That's correct.
And we can talk more on that during deliberations. That's a big discussion, always, so.
Well, I will say that although my preference is road funds, if the county commissioners, who are the final authority, view the funds as federal funds, then there's not a whole lot of discussion.
But the other part about the federal funds is they have to be spent on patrol.
Yes,
They can't be spent anywhere else.
or school.
And, well, yeah, the schools just get the 25% off the top and then, but the money that the county keeps is, the caveat and the way the ORS reads is it has to be patrol of county roads.
And federal funds, as you know, are often siloed, and that's what these are. But if you call them federal funds, then you're free to use them as needed within the category approved by that silo. Otherwise, if you call them road funds, we end up with the debate and the discussion and the argument that goes on every year. That I'd just as soon avoid.
There's
Well,
also a
there's-
number that I don't know what the answer is. I was hoping maybe I could learn it when I watched the public works discussion, but not all of those road funds or federal funds can be used for the patrol function. If there's a split there somewhere, I'm not sure what that is or what's left in that. It's even available.
I think he's talking about, and I think you worked on that, when Public Works actually tried to divide out
We did.
several years ago, and so there's one account that's truly like this reserve account, these federal dollars that were set aside for this, and then there's another large reserve account that's different.
Yes, so past practice before we accomplished that was all of those dollars were commingled. And I just didn't feel that was appropriate. So we went through a very extensive exercise to separate those dollars out. So this pot is gas tax and registrations. And this pot is dollars that we've received from the federal government. Gas taxes can only be used for certain things, and that is roads and bridges, essentially, our infrastructure. And the other pot of money is available for other uses, which is, again, infrastructure, roads and bridges and the such, the patrol of that infrastructure, as well as there's a line in there where excess dollars can be given to local schools. So, and that has been utilized in the past by several boards as well, although we try not to. They have a pretty decent sized budget on their own, so try not to go down that road very often. So that's how those things
When
are
did you do that?
separated. 2018, I believe, the 17-18 budget.
I don't remember hearing about that before. It's interesting.
That way, when we know when we spend dollars, we're spending them appropriately. When they're commingled, an argument could be made, well, you don't know which dollar you're spending, and you could be spending gas tax dollars on something that's inappropriate. That no longer is the case. And that process that we went through passed our audits, and it's very clear what pot of money is able to be used for what.
And do we have the balances in those figures?
It's like,
There's
is
about
one of them
20
like 38?
There's about 22 million in the federal, and then there's 60 million in the operating, which is gas tax.
And
So each year you continue to separate them as the funds come in?
And when the road department works on a federal road, they spend it out of the federal pot too.
Oh.
So when they were here, the beginning fund balance in the road fund that doesn't include federal funds is projected at 52 million. And in the federal fund, it's projected at 25 million.
So in other words, just really simplified, they're going to have an additional 3 million in the federal funds this year.
3.554.
Even with giving, or even with, if we use some of those federal funds for the sheriff's office. So they're still coming out ahead.
Well, they're also going to spend some down on some work that they're doing. But yes, we received 3.554 yesterday,
Monday,
Monday.
so
That's not,
we're
so
gonna
yes.
deposit 3.5. If this proposed budget is how we end up adopting, then we'll use 2.1 for the sheriff, plus whatever we use that Jeremy told us about yesterday on the reserve, and then that'll be their carryover. But you know, it kind of sounds to me like, okay, we received 3.5 if we use 2.1, and then he uses what he needs. It's almost sounds break-even-ish to me, but
We should do fairly well.
Yeah.
And then we'll just work on reauthorization again. That's the summer's job.
Or I guess the point, I guess why I asked for that clarification is we're not, even if we do use some of these federal funds for the sheriff's office, we're not taking back our reserve significantly. We're, like Vicky
we're
used the
using
term,
what
kind
we're
of
getting
evening out.
pretty much.
And you're saying that the road projects have to dip into those funds every year in order to maintain our county roads, and they also take out of the federal.
Most of our roads aren't federal, but there are some that are. So they keep track of which ones they are federal and which ones are not, and then they use the federal money on the repairs or the maintenance that they do on the federal roads, and then they use the other pot for the.
So when we chip sealed Crescent Cutoff Road last year, that was paid through the Federal Reserve. Because that is a road directly related to the access of forests. When we replace Ivory Pine Bridge, that is, well, there's 12 townships that need to be accessed by that bridge. And that'll be spent with federal dollars for that purpose.
It doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be, but that's the plan.
We could use gas tax dollars to do that too, but they're separating it out, so, because that's where that funds come from. So it's their desire, and our desire as the board, to try to keep everything, each fund standalone with where the roads are.
That's a great idea.
And then just expanding on it, and I'll save some of I have some things I'll save for deliberations, but I'll just put on that. There's a lot of programs that are starting to come out that historically that we have not pursued, especially related to bridge work with grants from the federal government, where we can leverage dollars that we have and pursue those grants. So instead of it costing us $2 million to replace a bridge, it may only cost us $1 million when we look for matching dollars from build grants and those types of things. So I think that our staff in Public Works has been much more proactive in seeking those additional dollars versus relying on dollars that we were given alternatively.
Okay.
With some good success recently.
I'm sorry, tell me again why you're here.
Because we
Who
need
are you?
$14 million to run the sheriff's office
What do we have budgeted in this one?
that we had budgeted for.
What are your charges for services? Those are contracts with different cities?
Yeah, our charges for services, I'll look at my note here.
I could see how much they are, but did you end up contracting with Chiloquin?
Yes, we have a signed contract with the city of Chiloquin still. We have Snow Park contracts with ODOT. We have a contract with Klamath Community College, with the county school board. We also have contracts with the forest, for forest patrols, through the BLM as well. All those total, what was it, 429? So all of our contract work, we have to have deputies available to work those contracts, and we set most of our contracts up for, it's essentially a reimbursement. So if we work the hours, we get reimbursed for it, so we set about trying to fulfill all of our contracts, every hour, everything, if not more. We're trying to keep those contracts rolling. Because of our entire budget, our contracts, I was going to say, maybe I thought I had that broken out here in a percentage, but it's a pretty good chunk of what we do. And some sheriff long before me figured out how to fulfill contracts to help offset the general fund dollars and keep people employed and keep them working in these areas. So whether it be a school resource officer or a forest patrol, even our marine unit. Those are all certified deputy positions that are full, and if you know what hits the fan anywhere else, we have deputies working that can respond. So it keeps them out there fulfilling their contracts, but when we need them, we grab them. So that works out good for me, because oftentimes we all hands on deck.
Sheriff, would you mind if we went back down through line items a little bit?
I'll do whatever you need.
I'm looking at vehicle fuel, and I rarely say this, but in 2019, you spent $136,390.12, and you have budgeted $145,000 for this year. And what made me think about it is that you said you were afraid of the fuel price. So I've been Googling what's been going on. 2019 gas, the average price of gas across the United States was $2.60 a gallon. In 2020, the average price of gas across the United States was $2.17. And since Biden's been in office, gas has gone up 25 cents a gallon average across the U.S. I'm not saying it's going to continue at that pace,
It will.
but that puts gas today at about $2.42. I'm questioning whether $145,000 is going to keep those cars rolling down the street, or if you're going to have to drive for 15 minutes and then sit for 2 hours to conserve fuel.
I remember a time in my last career where we were limited to how many miles a day we could drive because of fuel prices. But this is interesting because I kind of felt like you, Commissioner Boyd, were going to bring up fuel. This is one of the areas we cut. It's just indicative of everything else we've cut down to what we think we'll be able to do. But the category itself of materials and services gives us a little bit of room to move around if we don't hit that mark. I'm pretty sure we'll be able to we'll come close. Which is, like I said, it's indicative of just how close we're trying to present to you a budget that we think we can live within and get the job done. So, in your deliberations, if you wanted to move some more money in there, it wouldn't hurt my feelings at all.
I'm sure it wouldn't. I just wanted to know your opinion.
Yeah, we're just, we're looking at gas prices, we're looking at prices of everything, you know, with even our ammunition and things for our range trainings and all that stuff. We're looking at, so. Feel free to ask me about any of these other categories if you see something that looks out of whack. It's been enough time with it that our eyes start to cross and think we're seeing it. We don't. One of the things with our training, travel and training, all of our officers, and it doesn't matter which side of the house they're on, that's kind of how I talk about it, corrections or patrol. DPSST, the Standards and Training Government Agency, has certain training requirements for everybody to stay certified. Just because it's a COVID year or just because of other things that happen does not alleviate us from trying to, from hitting those benchmarks. There's each individual officer's, mine included, our certifications are based on it, getting a significant minimum amount of training hours in. So we've tried to mitigate that a lot by using some Police One online training, because traveling training was out the window, in-class training was out the window this last year, but as that starts to ramp up again, we've got to make sure that we get our people to training. So we're watching that very closely.
Sheriff, I'm going to the correction side of the house, if that's what you want to say. I'm looking at supplies other. It's gone up from $2,500 to $22,000. 780% increase.
Are we finished with patrol? Were there any other
Well, I
comments?
can
or-
stay on patrol if you want. I'm just picking.
Oh, I
I
just,
had one question about the internal services. What is that used for? Internal services, because it went up quite a bit.
Internal services, and I think you can help with that, I'm sure. Those are fees charged to us by other county departments for their service. And we have no control over what those are.
No, the interdepartmental charges between internal service and insurance liability are entered in everyone's budgets by finance. It's to pay internal costs. The internal service line itself is for the internal service departments, county council, HR, finance, IT. And there's a long formula and a big spreadsheet that calculates that every year.
I'm good. Okay, thank you.
We come across other internal services that don't show up. We have to take something to the dump, we have to pay. So,
Well, that's because you're a customer on that side.
that's right. When we've got marijuana to dump out there, we have to pay for it.
There's a line item for that. It's right here.
Some of my favorite days.
Any other questions or comments on patrol? If not, let's move to corrections. Commissioner Boyd? You had a question.
No, Commissioner, I'm trying to find it on my corrections. Where are we talking?
Well, it's under materials and services. You have supplies other.
Okay,
In 2019, you spent $405.85.
okay,
In 2020, you spent $2,000.61. In 21, you budgeted $2,500, and in 22, you're asking for $22,000.
because that was because our jail kitchen supplies, the supplies we use in our kitchen, was moved out of our food budget into its own line, so that was changed. Did I get that right, Shannon? So that has to do with just moving it out of our jail kitchen supplies were taken right out of our food line budget, but we've separated that now, so our jail kitchen supplies are their own line item, so that went up. So I don't know where our food,
Well, your food went down $40,000.
right, so there's part of the difference. And the other reason it went down is, I'm gonna say COVID related. We don't have as many prisoners in our jail on any given day as we usually do. We didn't have to feed as many, so our food is, we've cut back a little bit. So that's to answer your question. That's why that went up so much. It was just a transfer out of the food budget to that, to be more accurate.
Can you speak to your medical services going up?
Can you tell me which one you're looking at? We have several different medical lines.
What do you need, the code number?
You're talking about where it just says medical services?
Yes. It looks like actuals are between $3,000 and $5,000. This current year you budgeted 30, and the current proposed is 25,000.
Yeah, when it comes to preparing for what might come on medical and the services we might need to provide, that's a mark that's almost impossible to hit. It's great when we come under, but it's not. It's hard to calculate on any given day. We need to because when someone comes into our facility, for those that you don't know, we are responsible for their medical care. We have a medical staff. We transport people to the emergency room or the hospital. There's times when we certainly purchase their medications for them if they're there for a long period of time. The medical piece is really hard to pin down, so we always want to make sure that we plan for enough to cover for that sort of a thing. If we come in under, which it looks like we probably will this year, those are savings that we have.
Do you know where you're coming in at this year on that?
I don't know. I think, Shannon, maybe you could look at the.
I think it might be a little more this year, because we've been getting a few more, of services that aren't written down. We have a good cooperative agreement with the hospital, and they do, yeah, the hospital does work with us quite a bit. And so we are able to keep this number down, from what it would be. But the OBGYN appointments that we've done, and also if we get any ambulance, then those are pretty expensive for LCHs. I think it'll be a little more this year.
So a little more than the 30,000.
No, a little more than the actuals from previous years. I did reduce the budgeted amount because it's not coming into that. And that is because we've also been able to work with the hospital, and then we've had to transfer people to the community hospital there. And they've also been able to work with us and help us apply for people to be able to get on medical insurance who aren't currently on insurance, as long as they stay there. It gets a little convoluted, but as long as they stay there overnight, then they can start working and then getting coverage, and then we are kind of responsible. But if those things don't happen, it could be a lot more.
So far this year, they've spent $22,101 in medical services.
22,000?
2,101,
Oh, 2,000.
just in that one line item though. That's what you're talking about, medical
Right.
services, yeah.
Is that the up-to-date number? Because I think what I have, our actuals go back to December, so I'm not really all that close to be accurate. Yeah, our medical and our jail is one thing that we spend a lot of time worrying about, if you will, and considering and trying to figure out what's the right thing to do. And so trying to stick the finger in the wind and figure out just which inmate's going to cost us just how much money is. We want to make sure we're prepared, so we budget accordingly. And Shannon's able to see the day-by-day things come in. I don't necessarily see those, so I lean heavily on her finger in the wind of what might happen.
So do I. I lean heavily on her.
You know, speaking of the jail, this is one of the areas that I think the public really doesn't realize, and I just want to put a little bit of plug in for our jail. In the justice system, in the criminal justice system that we have in Klamath County, it's probably like this just about everywhere. The jail becomes such a hub of how everything has to work and go through. We have to keep our jail healthy and working. And because I was in a meeting on Monday, for example, a lot of treatment folks, the tribes were involved, a lot of people with mental health and medical health issues come in and out of our jail. How they get connected to the services that they do get, because it's not all about punishment, just so you know. It's about holding people over as long as the courts want them held for various reasons. They've been accused of crimes. Many of them have not been convicted of anything yet. And that's why we are required to take care of their medical, their mental health needs, all of those things. So all that to say that if the jail wasn't functioning the way it was, a lot of these people that really do need services would not be able to get connected to their services. Every morning at 8:30 in our jail, we have meetings with KBBH, which is the county's mental health provider, with the tribe, with the court system. And every person that comes into our custody the day before is talked about specifically about what is the right thing to do, the best thing to do, the necessary thing to do for that particular person. Every single one. So whether it be provide services through mental health, services through medical, whether they need to go into a specialty court, veterans court or something else, all of those things are discussed. And so in years past, it always seems like when there was a budget crunch for the sheriff's office, the threat was, we'll have to close down part of the jail. I do not ever want to close down part of our jail. because of that reason. It is really a hub for all of those services that are provided to every single person in our community that needs them. Yes, they may have committed crimes. They also may not have the culpable mental state of having actually committed a crime. It's a mental health crisis, and we become the de facto mental health facility in our county. So if anything, I think we need a jail twice the size so that we could, you know, actually meet all the needs of all of these people that come and go. But we'll be happy to deal with what we've got. So I've learned a lot about jail in the last few years. What I knew about the jail 4 years ago was that's where you took people. I would drive in, drop them off, fill out some paperwork, and drive away, and never think of them again until I got a court trial notice. But that's not what the jail does. The jail is intimately involved with every single prisoner, every single day, and whatever their needs are. And my hat's off to everybody that works up there. It's a tough climate.
If I read correctly, I'm going to call it a sobering station has been proposed on the old West One site,
Yes.
Klamath Works. Will that have an impact on your jail?
It probably will, as long as they, when that gets open, as long as they have beds for what we would call detox, people that are, their only issue at the moment is the fact that they're intoxicated to the point where they can't safely care for themselves. Right now, if it's not the hospital, it's the jail. This provides another place for them to be taken. So I don't remember how many beds they have, 8 or 10 or something like that. But they also have, I believe they're working on some, potentially through KBBH, some mental health beds as well, because our law enforcement officers, whether they be our deputies or the city police, oftentimes as problem solvers, they run across people that are having whatever issue it is, and they just try to find the right place to solve the problem and to put them in the sobering center will be a great asset. We'll keep them out of our jail. One of the scariest things for our jail is people brought in on alcohol. You know, alcohol poisoning becomes one of the scariest things in the world. It's something that takes people's lives all the time, and having someone die in our jail is not a good day. So we would love them to be able to go somewhere else where they can actually be monitored at a better level than we're able to do. So hopefully that answers your question.
It did. On the other side of that same coin, though, recently we passed a measure that decriminalizes certain behaviors. Will that impact your operation? And forgive me, I don't remember the number of the
Ballot
measure.
measure 110.
Okay.
I don't think that this state fully realizes the terrible thing that happened with that. Kind of keeping in the same vein, I'm not here to preach about what's legal or what should be legal or not legal. As the sheriff, if it's illegal, I have something to say about it. If it's not illegal, there's really not much I should probably say. However, like I mentioned before, oftentimes getting people through our jail, through that hub, to get them the treatment that they need is important. So when you take a ballot measure 110 and you decriminalize the use of heroin, user amounts, if you will, heroin, methamphetamine, LSD, psilocybin mushrooms, all of those things, the fact that that was before a crime allowed us to get them into our grasp, if you will, get them underneath the hammer a little bit of the court system and make sure they got treatment. A lot of them, it's a treatment issue. But without that crime being attached to it, literally today, I would be better off, a citizen would be better off in their mind to be cited for 1 gram of methamphetamine. It would be cheaper for them to solve that issue than it would be to pay off a ticket if I gave them a ticket for not wearing a seatbelt. It's easier, it's cheaper for them to get away with it. And so because of that, this is my personal feeling, we have lost the ability to get those people before a judge that will get them into the treatment that they need. Because they can bypass that now altogether. The monies will be supposedly spent for treatment, but there's no way to get people to that treatment because their mindset isn't typically, gee, I'm going to take advantage of this treatment and get off of this substance that I like using. So I just don't think that this state, I'm going to get off my soapbox right now. I didn't vote for it. I can't believe as many people did. But as it affects the sheriff's office, here's where it affects us directly. My deputies, though I tell them that it's still important to me, and if you catch someone with 1 gram of heroin, I want you to cite them. Well, it's a $100 fee, or you take an online assessment, drug assessment. The average deputy is going to say, wait a minute, that's a bunch of work for me. It's not even really illegal anymore. And I'm afraid that they're going to turn their back on that opportunity to do that piece of their job. What I'm trying to figure out is if that's what's happening, that we're not looking anymore. It used to be we would try every legal reason we could to get into a vehicle or to get into somebody's pockets that we think are breaking their law. But if now it's not really even illegal, we're going to stop doing that. So that's how it directly affects us. Why would I risk, in today's current situation, why would I risk a bad search or a questionable search to try and get someone's little bitty baggie of methamphetamine out of their pocket when at the end of the day I'm going to give them a ticket, they have to pay $100 and they can walk away. You know what, I'm not even going to try and get in that guy's pocket. And I know that, you know, maybe that's a vernacular that we use in law enforcement, you know, get into your car, get into your pocket. There are legal ways to do that. Of course, that's what we do in order to solve crimes. But if it's not really a crime anymore, we're going to stop doing that. And it's not just here. It's all across the state of Oregon. So I think our numbers are going to be really messed up when it comes to drugs in Oregon now. I think it's way out of whack. That's from old school.
So Sheriff, are you proposing any new positions in corrections this year?
No.
Okay. And then, excuse me, I just wanted to ask if, when I lived in Jackson County, I was able to participate in a Citizens Academy through the Sheriff's Office. And it really gave me the ability to go into each part of the Sheriff's Department and the jail and all of that and see what the officers go through. And it was hugely eye-opening, and it was a great program. Does Klamath County have anything like that?
We have not done that in the county. I agree. I think that would be a great eye-opening experience.
And the people who were,
City police does have that.
oh, do they? The people who were selected to participate in it were people who were, affluent in the community or had the ability to, talk to a large group of other people so that they could communicate with them what they learned. And so they were strategically chosen, and it worked so well. And it changed the whole, and in this time in our lives where the sheriffs, any law enforcement really kind of has a negative, nationally, not locally, but has a negative tone to it, maybe a Citizens Academy would really show at least our local people, what a great thing that you provide for our community and how necessary it is.
Sounds like a great job for captains to set up. If I have captains, maybe I can do that.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Denise. quite a
Something
bit.
in the future. Okay. Any other comments or questions on corrections?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, if not, which one do you want to tackle next, Sheriff?
Well, let's talk about our civil division, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Along the vein of the sheriff's office really touches everybody's, just about everything in the community. Our civil division, and let me turn my page in case I have to refer to any notes. Oops, sorry about the mic there. We're also not adding any positions in the civil division. We did lose a position last year. Turned out to not be as horrible as I thought it might be. There's certainly more we could do, especially on the area of retention and records and those sorts of things. But we were able to get by. Part of that was because of the records management system that we got into place over the last year and a half that has helped, I think, tremendously with our reports and things like that. One of the things that seems to be going strong, one of the things our civil division does for us is monitor our concealed handgun license sales. There's for whatever reason, when political winds shift in this nation, all of a sudden we have more people that want concealed handgun licenses, and so that just goes up. We've been staying up with that program. It's one of our revenue sources. Those permits. That's one of the things that our civil division does, as well as serve civil papers, process everything that needs to take place there, orders from the courts. Any increases that you see in the civil division this year has to do with salary increases, I believe. And then once again, we've tried to cut back everything that we possibly could in that particular category as well.
Okay.
I think in our, let's say in our capital outlay, we were hoping to put a few dollars away in the civil division, I think, for potentially a new vehicle, but I'm not sure. It will be was it an equipment reserve? I could be way off base.
No, that's in animal control.
Oh, I'm sorry, animal control, that's correct, okay. Sorry. Any questions there? With the same number of people we did last year, we're not asking for any increases.
Okay.
We were able to get by.
Which
I've
one next?
got emergency management next.
Yeah, room 214.
Pardon me?
He's in room 214.
Oh, okay, our emergency manager apparently is next door, in case questions go beyond my scope. About a year and a half ago, just trying to remember, seems like the emergency management department for the county was placed underneath the sheriff's office. Our emergency manager is Brandon Fowler, I believe he's next door. There's a lot of things about the emergency management department that I know he can answer. If you have specific questions over it, I can try. It's basically mandated that each county have an emergency management department, and so we have that. It just happens to be underneath the sheriff's office. Currently, we have Brandon Fowler, the emergency manager. We have 2 part-time employees. One is half-time, and one is maybe not quite half-time, that help him in all the plans that they do. There's what they've been spending a lot of time on is mitigation efforts because of the 242 fire and those things that came from that. They've spent a lot of time writing grants for our county to provide things that we would not otherwise be able to provide. There's several different formats that those grants come in, both federal and FEMA grants as well. We were talking about bridges earlier. I don't want to get too far over my skis on this, but I know that in the future, one of the things that our emergency management department is going to be trying to do is work with FEMA for potential grants for bridges and that sort of thing, which could offset some of those road funds we were talking about earlier, or gas taxes or bridge funds. Well, there's Brandon now. Brandon, can you hear us?
I can, and I can speak to that if you'd like.
Yes, please.
So, one of the things that we looked at the 42 fire was there was opportunity through FEMA grants to look at infrastructure where previously they hadn't focused on those types of things, or they hadn't allowed those types of things. And so because we get extra points in the grant process and things like that, because of the fire we had last year, I sat down with the public works director and we talked about projects around the airport area and things like that, that may be mitigation type activities that we can help with on the bridges and roads front. And they've identified a handful of projects for us that we're in the process of developing a grant application for and looking at the feasibility of that. Those won't come into effect this budget year. Those FEMA grants usually take at least 12 to 18 months to develop and get funded, but it's something that we recognized as an opportunity and reached out to work with them on.
Thank you. That works pretty good. I didn't expect it to be that good.
Brandon, could you explain to me why contract services is $77,425 and we've never had that line item in the past?
Certainly. So one of the revenue sources we have is FEMA grant 4432, roughly $80,000 in revenue that's coming for a mitigation program. And what will happen with a lot of that money is we'll be working with local fire districts for fuels mitigation, for fire, and so this money will come in, we're kind of primary on it, and then it'll go out in terms of contract services with some of those fire agencies, residents, on identifying mitigation efforts and identifying those types of programs that may be available to them, or identifying is it cleanup, things of that nature.
Are you holding back a management fee for processing and doing that?
Absolutely.
And how much is that?
So FEMA gives us 5% off the, as a general rule. We built into this particular grant, I don't know the exact percentage off the top of my head, but there's a percentage project management fee that we keep with emergency management to oversee and manage the grant.
Thank you.
Can you talk about the rent? It looks like the rent has gone up. Have you moved buildings?
The rent did go up.
We've spent so much time
Sore
talking about
subject.
this for yeah.
So
Good eye, yeah.
the big picture is the sheriff's office facility isn't big enough to house emergency management or some of the other things that we do. So when we took over the emergency management department, it was housed down at the 911 center. They rent 2 offices to us down there. We have some additional needs for parking. So when they reviewed their what they wanted to charge us as a landlord, the price went up. It went up a bit. And so we agreed to it, I think, for this next period of time. And so that shows up in our budget is going up. We have looked at, we continue to look at ways to try and fit emergency management into our current building. Emergency management comes with some requirements for radio antennas and things like that that we would have to work on. But we simply do not have the office space to bring those folks in yet. We're getting close. We're getting really creative with those shipping containers, and it looks like Shipping Container Village at our office now. We're trying to figure out how to get them in place so that we can move a lot of our evidence needs out into alarmed containers outside to create space. We're trying to be creative. We've done really, really well. We've moved people around from place to place and crammed them in and doubled them up. But to bring in essentially 2 more people on any given day in our offices isn't going to work yet. So we're paying rent.
And doesn't the county have space available? If I recall, we're charging rent to other people.
This has been a big conversation amongst the board recently. You'll recall the developmental disability director was in here talking about adding 10 new people. He's running out of space. We've been trying to find another solution for OSU extension. I think the sheriff's office has been needing space for a while. Yeah, we're not overspaced or underspaced. So that's a problem that the county collectively is gonna have to solve over the next few years.
Yes. In the grand opening of the police department, I noticed, or it was pointed out, that they had huge areas of that building that were empty and were focused on the future when we became a metropolis as big as Portland. Assuming that there's still some empty space in that building, is the, God forbid, the county talk to the city?
I have not talked to the chief of police about using any part of his building.
I'm overwhelmed by your enthusiasm.
Well, it's his building, and so,
Well, 911, it's their building. All right, forget it. I'm just offering it as a thought for a potential, maybe someday.
I don't ever want that to sound like I don't like to work with the city police chief. We work together
Too late.
a lot. I don't mean it to sound that way. I don't really know just how full their building is. I'm in there occasionally. I thought they were using all their office space.
Downstairs, I remember, was full, but upstairs was, at the time, that was several years ago. Just a thought.
Well, it'd be something worth considering. They've got extra space and we need to rent.
And so this lease that you have with 911, is that just for 1 year, or how long is that?
I don't remember if it's 1 or 2 years, Shannon, or maybe Brandon knows.
It's a 1-year lease, and we're in the process of, the next year's portion of that, we have an option next year, which we've exercised, and we can exit out of that lease with 180 days notice, I believe.
And like I said, we're in the process of trying to get bids to create a row of containers along the back part of our lot to readjust that. Right now it looks terrible, but eventually we think we'll be able to move some of our evidence. We have, I think, 3 total rooms we use for evidence storage over the years. So if we're able to reduce that and end up with a little bit more office space, we're going to put it to use, whether it be emergency management or something else, I'm not sure, but certainly that's one of the things we've talked about.
I think you proposed a couple years ago, right, like building an evidence building.
Right, we gave up on that last year. It was $20-some thousand, so $25,000, I think. And so, we shifted gears. We kind of gave up on that and tried to go a little bit of a different route.
Any other questions on emergency management, comments?
I don't have anything, no, ma'am.
No, I mean, maybe just a comment that, Brandon's still relatively new, and this was his year of COVID, wildfires, lots of emergencies thrown at the emergency manager. And I've just been really pleased to watch not only his work, but the emergency management hasn't always been under the sheriff, and the sheriff's been awesome about embracing that role too. So kudos to both and everyone who's helped with that, because this has been quite the year for emergencies, quite the last 14 months or however long it's been.
Here.
I agree.
Thank you, Brandon. Good to see
Thank
you.
you.
Okay,
I have animal control next. What have you got?
we'll do animal control.
If you'll remember last year, well, let's go back 2 years. 2 years ago, we took animal control underneath the sheriff's office. So we were asked to do that. For a solid year, I balked at it. Was convinced that it would be the best thing to do for the county and for, so I did it. And so it came with some strings. I had certain things I wanted to do. I wanted to turn it into a full-fledged policing arm of the sheriff's office when it came to enforcement of animal and animal abuse issues that arise. So we were able to do that. Last year, what we were given was 2 deputies to fill that. We were not able to fill the second deputy spot last year when we were here a year ago. So because that position was not full, it was cut from our budget. So, what do we do with what we have, with one animal control deputy, one animal control officer, and the support staff that goes with that, all under the supervision of a specialty services sergeant that we have at the sheriff's office. And so Sergeant Lewis is in charge of that. He's done a great job. He's in charge of that and other things as well. But animal control, I'm sure, takes most of his time. We had one patrol deputy assigned to animal control. He had to have a surgical procedure, so he was out. So what we had to do, because we didn't have that second one in place, was backfill it with one of our other patrol officers, because those animal calls still come in. I don't have the specific numbers for you, but they handle many calls a day, both in and outside of city limits. It doesn't matter. We have seized many large animals that were being mistreated throughout the year. We continue to do that. All in all, throughout the season, it seems like we've been able to meet most of our budget benchmarks for fines and forfeitures and those sorts of things. I think it's in much better shape perhaps than it was a couple of years ago, mostly because of the work of those folks down there and Sergeant Lewis himself. So we found, and this is one of the reasons I balked before, is because I knew that when it comes to animals, you have all kinds of people love their animals. Let's just put it that way. Even people that can't care for their animals love their animals, and so it's quite contentious at times. We spend a lot of time trying to assure the public that we're not overcharging them, that we're not trying to fine them excessively, that we're not trying to wreck their lives. We simply have needs in this county to control dogs, and we need to take care of the animals. If you have them, you need to be able to take care of them. If not, we try and work with them to make sure that's done, and at some point, even criminal charges oftentimes could help. So it's been quite the challenge the last couple of years with animal control. We've all learned a lot about that. I think it's still would benefit from a second position, though I'm not asking for that second position back. Simply because it's a COVID year and everything else that's going on. I just think that we're just try and get by again. If we get hate mail at the sheriff's office, often it surrounds some complaint about why did I have to pay this fee for my dog's license. And I'll admit, I found one day that my dog's license had expired, and I too had to pay that extra fee because I let it lapse. So I get it. Some people don't think they should have to pay for any dog licensing, and it seems like this year's been amazing with COVID. Everybody wants everything waived. It doesn't really matter what it is. I shouldn't have to pay this because there's COVID. So we work with that. We try and be sensitive. One of the things I think where we're missing out on is, which is something we need to work at, when judgments are entered, oftentimes through the district attorney's office on criminal cases, there are fees associated with it that we ended up paying that sometimes gets waived in the process of coming to a determination. I think it was $160,000. Yeah, I think there's quite a bit of money, fees that get waived in that criminal process, which I would hope maybe wouldn't get waived. But I'm sure it's on trying to figure out a reconciliation for moving these things along. But those are fines that could be recovered and put back into animal control. So we'll continue to work with the district attorney's office on that sort of thing. Maybe it's not that high, but it seems like it was quite a bit. In other words, we seize a horse or a llama or whatever it is, large animal, we have to care for those animals till it comes to time for court. There's ways for people to waive those things right away, and we can deal with the animal. We won't have to feed it for a year or 6 months. In one case, I think it was 4 years. For a couple of dogs, it was an incredible amount of time and money that We have to take care of them, much like our adult prisoners, our animal prisoners, we have to take care of them until trials are adjudicated, so. There's our animal control unit.
Sheriff, refresh my memory, when you took over animal control, I believe you took the animal control office official and 2 clerks.
There's 3 clerks.
Now you have 3 clerks and a patrol deputy. So you've added those since you've taken it on.
Yeah, that was kind of the deal that if the sheriff's office was gonna take over animal control.
Right.
I needed the 3 clerks, I needed 2 deputies, and an animal control official. What we have now is the 3 clerks, 1 animal control deputy, and an animal control official. And we've supervised it with our specialty services sergeant to make some movements there to provide adequate supervision.
And the position that you have listed as vacant in your spreadsheet is that not in the proposed budget then?
There isn't a vacancy in the spreadsheet.
Oh, it says a patrol deputy vacant.
What line?
126?
That's in, 126. I think you're on the wrong spreadsheet. Here, look up here.
Right?
Is that the same spreadsheet you have?
No?
But if
Well,
we were
it's the same
deliberations, you
numbers,
decide
I
to add
think.
another position to animal control, we would take it.
This is the personnel
I just
spreadsheet.
adore you. I really,
Oh, yeah,
really.
2.2
Where
million,
did
that's
you
that's
click
not
on
that
that?
much different than 2.1.
In open drive?
It's a little number.
It's just a little number.
It's a little number.
I wonder if she's going off the that are requested.
Oh, yeah, before the budget workshop, I think before the budget workshop, we had put that back in. I mean, it was our pie in the sky hope of what we think should probably happen, but, you know,
When you want to accommodate.
on our master board of vacancies, we don't show one, a vacancy in animal control.
Okay. Do you see it, Vicki?
Yeah, can you put
Okay.
the correct spreadsheet in there?
Now, animal control is one of those specialty departments, just like some of our other contract services, where this is one of the reasons why I wanted a certified deputy in animal control, is because that way they can write their own search warrants, they can issue their own summons and that sort of a thing. But also, if the events of the day require us to grab a deputy, we have the animal control deputy available. So it is not uncommon for our animal control deputy to, between calls for animal control calls, handle another call for service, whether it be a crash or back up another deputy on a disturbance call or something like that. That is the beauty of the system we have now with all these other things, is that when we need them, we can grab them.
And you're still operating on Washburn,
Yes,
this office?
we have agreements with the Humane Society there. So that helps us with the care of the animals and that sort of thing that we have there. So that seems to be working very well.
Any questions or comments on animal control? Okay, what's next?
Special revenue is what we have next on the list. You're gonna probably see some increased revenues and expenses for coronavirus grant things, I think. We are looking to take some of the money from some of these pots here to move towards our equipment reserve funding. Once again, it's just kind of buying down from some of these special revenue reserves to move into places where we are going to need it this next year. Partly to help remove the burden from this group of deciding, where's this money gonna come from for our equipment reserve to take care of vehicles and whatnot. One of them would be, we just set up to purchase a new jail van this time, so it's just under $60,000, so I think we're gonna move $60,000 hopefully from special revenue to that jail equipment reserve fund. We've been in the mode for the last couple of years of kind of any place we find a reserve, just trying to figure out if we can afford to move it over and spend it, saving road fund dollars or whatever. The special revenue fund is one of those that I defer very heavily to Shanna over there for keeping track of for me. She did provide me some notes, so if you have questions, hopefully I can answer them. If not, she's here.
Question?
Or any-
Supplies other, in 21, we budgeted 3,500. In 22, 38,100.
Could that be the coronavirus? That's the coronavirus?
You're buying coronavirus?
No.
PPE.
Help me out, Shanna.
So there was a grant obtained from the Bureau of Justice, and it was $58,000, and we spent some of it the year we're currently in, and what's going to be remaining projected for next year has been budgeted mostly to supplies other, because those would be things like protective equipment, masks, maybe some disposable protective clothing, and also some computer equipment for working from home.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You're right, she knows a lot more than
Yeah,
you.
she does, she does. And one of the things that we're looking at, and I don't really know how this fits in the conversation today, but this coronavirus funding that's coming to the county, I think if I understood it correctly, when we can identify expenses that directly relate to, that have hit our departments with, because of the coronavirus, that we should document those things and try and figure out what those expenses are. So
Absolutely.
about a month ago, I asked Lieutenant Bryson, who's our jail commander, which is, by the way, the jail is where we got hit the most in our department with coronavirus issues, to start compiling just what did it cost us as a sheriff's office, for this coronavirus effort. I called him on the way down here this morning so I could have an accurate number. Right now, they've come up with what they believe to be $130,000 to $150,000 of added expenses this year, just for the man hours and the time to wipe down every surface every day. All of the additional movements that we've had to do, the way they've had to restructure the entire the jail in order to have a single cell occupancy, which we talked about the jail. This day, we have not had coronavirus in our jail. Not every sheriff's office in the state can say that. They've had huge issues in Josephine and Jackson County and others. We have worked very, very hard, but it's cost us time and money and staff and everything else. So that number, we may be looking for some sort of reimbursement from that grant, maybe up to $150,000.
It's a good heads up, and appreciate you and Lieutenant doing that work. That'll be important in the next couple months.
Yeah, if I could find that it cost us millions, I'd present that, but I don't think it was that high. But on the patrol side, it didn't really change our operation all that much. Yeah, we had to buy some masks and some other things, but it just wasn't as significant as it was in the jail. So that was easier for him to compile that. So
That's great.
that may not fit into our special revenue discussion, but maybe it does too. I'm not sure how that all works. Thank you for recognizing how smart Shannon is.
Well, it's apparent to anybody.
We all know.
Thank you for coming to work today, Shannon. A lot of the monies in our special revenue accounts are earmarked for certain things. People donate to our agency. A lot of things. When they specify where they want their donations to go, this is where we track that sort of a thing, whether it be our canine program, snowmobile, things. A lot of our volunteers actually do such a great job that people are so appreciative that they send us checks. So we try and direct those monies specifically to those groups that earned it. It would be our mature volunteer program, our CERT committee, our CERT and our search and rescue portion of our operation. Certainly, they really shine during the 242 fire and in some other instances. So we even had a gentleman from California that called me one day, and it was kind of a surprising phone call. And he said, "Hey Sheriff, I just wondered if you could use a large pot of money, so give me a call." I mean, it was something like that. So I figured this is a setup. So I called him, and what he said is that my wife and I, they were successful people. He'd been a state senator in California. He comes up every year to get his concealed handgun license in Oregon, and he likes the way that he's treated by our staff. And so he was giving out some money at the end of the year. So he was just wanted to know where I could use it. So I said, whatever you choose to give, I'd like to go to our search and rescue unit. They're underfunded. And so he did. He sent us a $5,000 check. So it goes into special revenue for search and rescue. All of a sudden, we had a need for this. It was covered. So we get those. We do. We actually get these gratitude gifts that come in. Our mature volunteer program, they do vacation house. They come by your house. If you're on vacation, you sign up for their program. Our volunteers will come by your house a couple of times a week. They'll walk around it, make sure there's nothing been done to it. And some people are so appreciative of the fact that they will do that we get $50 check here or there, and thank you very much. And so it goes into special revenue, and it's earmarked for those. So when they need new jackets or they need something else, well, we've got a fund to pay for that.
Any other questions or comments?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Probably didn't know you were stuck with me for a couple hours. did
Oh,
you?
this isn't my first rodeo.
How about Marine?
Yes, sir.
Well, Marine is about, in rough figures, about 2/3 covered by our Marine unit. Is about 2/3 covered by the Oregon State Marine Board monies that come in. I think this particular year was $212,000. I think we cover the rest with general fund dollars, if you will. One of our mandates, of course, is to take care of people wherever we find them, and we find them on our waterways quite a bit in need of help. So we have a very robust Marine unit. Part of that Marine unit is also our volunteer section, which is actually part of our search and rescue unit, but attached to Marine because it involves boats, is our small boat rescue volunteers. There's expenses there, which is outlined in our budget. It's pretty straightforward. It's almost the same just about every year. Like I said, a few more $1,000s this year than before. One of our challenges this last year was we had two, the normal cadre of Marine deputies is two, one corporal, one deputy. A few months ago, our second Marine deputy took a job in another area, so he left us. And because of other staffing issues, we didn't feel like we could fill it right away. And because it was winter, and during the winter time, our Marine unit isn't as active, although they do stay pretty active in maintenance of all of our equipment and also teaching schools. They go to each and every elementary school every year and put on classes for boating safety. Well, the schools weren't in session either, so we just did not fill immediately that second position. So it's been vacant for about 5 months now. So we've had salary savings in there, but we are filling it, by the way, by the end of this month, because it's that time of year again where we're going to need two Marine officers able to handle those calls and make those inspections and do all those other things that's required for the grant. So that person's going to have to come out of patrol to fill that spot in Marine, but we've already got a conditional job offer for that replacement for that person. We've already got the plan to backfill it right away. This is an aside, and I don't know why I just thought of this, but a lot of our staffing issues are impacted by the fact that a lot of our people are involved in the military and they get sent on military assignments. We have 2 currently overseas that directly come right out of our patrol, FTEs, if you will. So depending on the needs of the military, oftentimes we could be staffed just perfect, and then 2 of them have to leave for a year. So we seem to deal with that every year. We don't really have much of a margin of error there for people. So I don't know why I just thought of that just now, but it was, the point being, we don't have any extra bodies. Any questions on Marine? We don't buy the boats, by the way. Those are provided to us by the Marine Board, as well as fees to maintain them. So if you see a really cool, shiny boat going by, that's been provided to us. I do hear that once in a while. We've
Me
got so
too.
much money, we've got all these great boats.
Me too.
If we have a boat, it's been given to us generally.
Any questions or comments on Marine?
No, ma'am.
Okay, let's move to court security.
Court security?
Yep, that's the next what I have. What do you have?
Court security is typically kind of a standalone thing, but I'll do whatever you like. Court security?
Search and rescue.
Search and rescue?
Yeah.
I am so impressed by the volunteerism of people in this county. I don't know that it can anywhere express more than our search and rescue unit, which comprises approximately 80 volunteers, some in North County and some down here. I'm on their little link. I see every call out that they get called out on, where these civilians volunteer their time for training and meetings, and then they're on call 24/7. If they're needed anywhere, they show up. They don't all show up every time. Usually it's whatever is needed. But we have about 80 volunteers in our search and rescue. That's divided up between a mounted posse, search and rescue, small boat rescue, which I mentioned earlier, our ground search and rescue. We have a North County search and rescue component, like I said. We have been able to acquire snowmobiles, side-by-sides, horses I mentioned, anything that's boats, anything that's needed to rescue somebody, we hope to have, and they get used a lot. This year, for whatever reason, it seems like they've been specializing in people going out and getting stuck in the snow, and then usually it's a Sunday night. Right, okay, Dale is on our Dale over here is on our search and rescue team. Weirdest one the other day, some woman called, totally freaked out. She was on a bicycle stuck in the snow. Now how she got there, I don't know, but she made the call to 911, and our lieutenant got a hold of her by phone, says, I know exactly where you are, stay right there, we'll come get you. So we sent a side-by-side in and threw her bike in the back and hauled her out. But it's been nonstop, Dale. It's been nonstop this year. It's been strange. Our search and rescue unit in North County was the recipient from Mid-State Electric of a $30,000 snowcat that they got done using this year, and so they thought we would be a good place to give it to, and man, is it nice. So then we needed a trailer for it, so we were scrambling around for money to buy a trailer to haul it on, and they said, oh heck, keep the trailer it's on too. So special thanks to Mid-State Electric this year. We have quite a bit of that going on. But the funding of search and rescue, I don't know exactly how many general fund dollars come out of that. Shannon, help me find that piece.
Well,
Transfer from patrol.
yeah, it comes through the transfer line.
Okay.
And it's at 76,874 this year.
A little higher than last year.
I think we're able to fund it a little better because of the salary savings in Marine. Those funds get split between SAR and Marine. And because we're having a bigger carry forward into Marine next year, we're able to help SAR more.
Okay. There's a better explanation than I could have given. One of the things we're hoping to provide for our, I forgot to mention them before, was our dive rescue volunteers. Klamath County for many, many years has been able to help every other search and rescue unit in the state, and even in northern Klamath County, because some time ago they had what they call a side scan sonar, which is a sonar that we use in the water to help locate, unfortunately, usually body recoveries from drowning victims. Our side scan sonar is at the end of its useful life, and it needs to be replaced. We're trying to figure out how to do that. We went back and forth with trying to figure out whether they needed, search and rescue needed a communications vehicle, which is also needs replacing for the side scan sonar, and we felt like the side scan sonar would be probably the best way to go. We may be able to figure out another way with our C1 or our command vehicle.
Is that proposed in this?
Pardon me?
Is the replacement of that proposed in this
It
budget?
is. There's a $50,000 transfer from Sheriff's Special Revenue that is that you'll see under
Okay.
line 4923. So if we can swing that, I just think it would be, our dive rescue people have a horrible job recovering bodies, and they actually do that quite a bit. And with this, our search and rescue, by the way, belongs to 7 other counties. It's called CORSAR, it's California Oregon Search and Rescue. It's basically we all combine together to be part of a big unit to help each other out wherever something's going on. Whether if you remember the Kim search over there out of in Josephine County years ago, whether it be a plane that crashes into the ocean over in Curry County, or anyway, we help each other out. If we need their help, they show up. If they need our help, we try and show up. One of the things that we're able to bring to the table has always been the side scans. So that's kind of been our piece of the help. Some of them have better aircraft capabilities. Some of them have other communications capabilities, but it's combined, I don't know, it's a collaborative effort. And it works very, very well.
Will this $50,000 cover the replacement of that?
It seems to me, I thought it was 60,000, but I think 50,000 was close. Is that right?
We're proposing to transfer 50,000 from special revenue, but we're budgeting at $60,000 for the summer.
To make
Well,
up.
I believe it belongs in here, and I'm supportive of that. If for whatever reason that doesn't make it through, I would be willing to work with you to identify funding somewhere else. I think that's important.
It is. It's just,
I would be committed to making sure that happens.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's just kind of been up on our board for a long time. We looked at just replacing the umbilical cord to it, thinking that long cable that attaches the sonar itself would fix it, but that alone was well over $30,000, so we just felt like You know, we're
Might
just
as well
attaching a
find
new wire to an old piece of equipment, we might as well just look at. And it will last for years. I'm sure this will go on for another dozen years probably, but this should be good. So. I was even asked a question, well, you know, one of our employees is an avid fisherman and he's got some of the best technology in his bass boat available. And he says, why don't you just use these bass fishing sonars? Well, it's not the same. It's just not.
It's just not. Yeah. Although I like to use your machine when I go fishing because
Yeah. One of the reasons we know it's not working properly is our search and rescue unit was not able to locate a drowning victim in a deep lake up north. That county ended up bringing someone out of Idaho, and it cost them money, I think, to bring them over.
I'm sure.
But that particular equipment was able to spot what ours used to be able to spot. So it's just not working.
Copy that. Yeah, this department's worth every penny. The job and the amount of searches that have been done over the last 24 months is absolutely unreal. With a lot of great success, I might add. Not always, but a lot of great stories have come out of search and rescue in Klamath County Sheriff's Department.
They not sing their praises any louder.
How
should
big
be
of a
really
group
proud of
is it?
I think I keep trying to count the ebbs and flows, but it's right around 80 between North and South County. If you count our dive rescue or small boat rescue, if you count North and South County search and rescue members, it ebbs and flows with people that come and go. Some more active than others. There are sometimes calls come out and there's 3 names I can tell you right off the bat will always show up, and others come as they can. And if they come as they're needed, they break things down into operational periods. So a lot of times they get the initial 4 or 5 people show up, and then they start planning for the second operational period to try and figure out who's coming to relieve them.
So 80 searches?
Pardon me?
80 searches, you said?
80
Uh,
volunteers.
Volunteer. Oh, thank you.
I think we probably pulled. It's not me. I think we probably pulled 40 people just out of the snow this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
40 people out of snow, we didn't have any snow.
I mean, well, there's just enough snow that they want to go get out of the house, and they hit snow and they just keep driving.
Should be proud of them.
My Lieutenant Bryson is our jail commander, but he's also head of our search and rescue unit because I can't pry it away from him. He loves it, but he texted me last week and says, hey, I was out in the snow and I got stuck, and guess what? I got myself out. Why can't other people do this? Stuck on a bike. That was the best one so far this year.
Yeah.
How far in the snow do you ride on a bike before you
Stop.
Right.
Just stop.
Anyway, apologize for going off on the side there.
Any other questions for
No, man.
search and rescue?
Yeah, please take care of my search and rescue unit. They are amazing. It's one of our mandated services. If we didn't have these volunteers to do it, our deputies would have to try and do it, and they would never get anything else done. So all they would be doing. Port security is what I have next. If you
I
want.
think that's
Yeah,
it.
I
Is
think
that
this
the
is-
final one?
This is the last.
Okay.
We're moving good.
One of the things that we're also mandated to do as a sheriff's office is to take care of security in our courthouse. Interestingly enough, it says we need to take care of security in our courthouse, but it doesn't say what that has to look like. So what we've done is we have one full-time deputy that works courthouse security, and we have a handful of part-time folks that cover that for us. If you go in to the courthouse across the street, you'll be met by at least one. Sometimes there's 2. You know, you'll have to be scanned to go in there. About once a month, they send me a list of the things that they've seized off of people that they did not allow into the courtroom. It almost always includes 30 or 40 knives. Occasionally, there's a handgun. That's usually met with sometimes even they've been cited for trying to bring handguns in there. Strangely enough, occasionally a can of beer will show up with things that they've seized off of people that they didn't allow into the courthouse, but it's pretty amazing the things that they keep out. One of the things that we did in the courthouse through our whole, which we haven't really talked about, was our whole, the way we have to now cite people. Instead of accepting everybody into the jail, we often have to cite people to appear in court or go through our pretrial release officers through the jail, which is funded by the JRI grant, by the way, which we didn't talk about either. But I think Aaron Hartman must have talked about the JRI grant a little bit, which we can talk about. But anyway, people, instead of always going to jail, oftentimes their first court appearance is because we've summoned them to court for a crime. They appear in court, they meet the judge, they have to be booked and released. So we have to get their photo, we have to get their fingerprints. It's part of the requirement. We've taken care of that through our court security by making sure we have one person assigned to book and release them right there in the courthouse. What was happening was the judge would say, go up to the jail and get yourself booked and released on this crime, and they would never show up. Right? They walk out of the building. The last thing you want to do is go up and get booked and released at the jail, so they disappear. Then we have warrants for fail to appear, because they fail to appear what they were supposed to do. But now, over across the street, I don't know if you remember, right across from the district attorney's office, there was a little alcove that used to be for snacks, for soda and chips or whatever. That's been turned into our book and release area. So our court security people, they will now leave the judge's office, they will go down there, they will stand in line, and they will be booked and released before they ever leave the building. So a lot of our booked, so we got rid of a lot of those fail to appear issues, where people will then be driving around with warrants out for their arrest, which we stop and then have to deal with them again and again and again. We've taken care of that. So our court security also does that for us. They take care of our book and releasing right out of court. And so when you look at the number of peoples that were booked into the county jail, a large percentage of those actually are booked and released right across the street. It's the same, it looks the same mugshot, fingerprints. We've got the equipment over there to do that. So it was an expense to get that set up, but I think it saves us a lot in the long run.
Well, you don't have to transport them to jail to do it.
Yep. Yeah, so I mentioned our justice reinvestment money. Part of a big scare we had this year was it looked like maybe they changed that. This is a money that comes down from the state, from the Criminal Justice Commission. They call it justice reinvestment. It's monies to pay local sheriff's offices to house people locally in their jails instead of sending them to prison. It's the easiest way to say it. Prisons are expensive. I think the state wants to get out of the prison system. So they figured out a way to pass money down to the counties to help us keep those prisoners that need to be lodged for lengthy periods of time in the county jails. So money comes attached to that. So we make as much use of that as we possibly can through our pretrial release program, which has been very successful. This year, our budget reflects our best guess that we might get 85% of the money we got last year. At the beginning of the budget season, we thought we might not get any of it, but now things have turned upward. The possibility is we'll get all of it. So, if that were to happen, of course that would be less money we would need to spend, and there would be more road fund money, so we would have savings.
Yeah. I think we plugged most of that into the budget. We just went ahead and anticipated.
Yeah, justice reinvestment money keeps basically our CPOT open, or about 1/3 of our jail. I mentioned earlier how we just can't afford to go to our jail. It's the hub of so many things. It helps keep CPOT open. It pays for our salaries. It pays for our pretrial release program, which keeps people out of our jail that will show up to court and that sort of a thing. So it's all interconnected. It's all connected in one way or the other. So this is one piece of funding that we just absolutely count on. If we don't get it, that's about $500,000 a year of our budget. And so if we don't get it, we're gonna be hurt. But we think we will. We think we have done a really good job in Klamath County. Aaron Hartman from Community Corrections, that is a huge piece of what he does and keeps that going because it comes through his department. So we work hand in hand with Community Corrections for that JRI money in that grant.
And so Vicki, could you confirm, looking at the revenues, this fund is primarily funded through the general fund dollars?
Court security, yes. There is about $50,000 a year that comes from municipal court, circuit court, and justice court from fees, but it's not able to fund the whole subject matter.
I'm sorry, Chairman, for getting off of the court security.
Oh, no, that's okay.
I'm gonna blame it on the date flow I'm thinking.
And so one of the other, might have been Aaron, did a presentation on the JRI, but he had some court, right? Didn't he? No?
Pre-trial release, did he mention pre-trial release positions and funds
I
with
can't
that?
remember. I thought it was court related, and I thought it was a grant that specifically paid for that service. But I don't remember, and I didn't make a note of it.
Pardon me?
So that goes to the DA.
Yeah, they pay for some of the behavioral court, DA.
Oh, it was the DA's office. That's it. Okay. Okay. Okay, any comments or questions on, yes?
Not related to court security, but in the broader sense, you said, talking about court security, everything is connected. In the broader sense of in law enforcement, everything is connected, will Warner Creek closing have any impact or influence on your operation?
Well, I'm gonna have to assume that if they close the 3 prisons that they plan on closing, that it could have some effect. It could be that more money could come down for us to try and house them in our jails, the state prisoners. You know, judges, when judges sentence people to more than a year incarceration, that's basically a prison sentence. So our jails are typically set up to keep people for a year or less. So I don't really know how that will affect us. If I was in Lake County where Warner Creek is, it'd be probably devastating to the economy over there. What it might provide us is a list of qualified corrections officers that might be looking for jobs. So I don't know, but we have hired people that worked for the state in Warner Creek before that have given up their job there to come work for us in corrections. So I'm not thinking it's a good thing. Personally think the state should stay in the prison business. There's a lot of people should be there. And there's a good argument to be made where they might do better. They might be rehabilitated better in a local setting. But that's not for everybody. But certainly that's true. I've kind of changed my mind on that a little bit. I've watched it work. Warner Creek, I don't know. And I feel for Lake County because I know that's a big part of their economy over there right now.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions on court security? Okay. Anything further you want to say?
Thank you for bearing with me for almost 2 hours. When I said I look forward to this day, that was a lie. I don't ever look forward to this day. But I tried. because I don't know really where your deliberations will lead you. I've always, we've always been able to survive. I tell people that, I have to tell myself this, this county needs a strong sheriff's office that's able to fill all the gaps that it does and to undergird everything that happens with the criminal justice system. And if it's true that providing protection for the county residents is the first job of government, then I think we have a huge part to play in that. So we just hope that we are doing a good enough job that it's seen, it's visible, and it's appreciated, and it's funded appropriately. So I don't look forward to your deliberations, but maybe I'll listen in on Zoom or something. Let's see.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
At this time, I'll open it up for public comment. Do we have anyone online?
No.
And did we receive any written comments? Okay.
We are ahead of schedule, Chair. Once again, look at you. Doing a job.
Well, we
Chair,
didn't
thank
take
you
a
very
break,
much. Yes.
so
Yeah,
I would
Haley was
propose.
just actually commenting on that. She's like, how is it that you guys haven't taken a break?
Yeah, I would propose that we take lunch now and maybe, what time is lunch supposed to be here?
I think food's coming at noon.
Okay, so maybe come back at 12:30 for deliberations, would that work? Or do you want to make it 1 o'clock?
Yeah, it has to be one. I think it's noticed that way. Plus, I think
Oh.
some of us kind of set up a little bit of side meetings during our lunch to try to do our other business that we have to do.
Okay,
I know I have at least one interview over lunch hour.
okay, so let's recess now at 11:30 and then we'll resume at 1 o'clock.
Okay.
Thank you.
These came from here, apparently last.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. You're working.
Yeah, because actually that makes it easier for me, because I don't like.
So,
Okay, yeah, and I figured it would be fine, but you had made the comment about not having a bunch of stuff.
our first year, 17-18, we budgeted 1.6 million.
Yeah, because you were just saying that you were gonna be gone.
Yeah.